I'm not joking. This might be better than the decent. Hey guys, and welcome back to Honeycomb. My name is Keo, and today we're talking about this. This is the Breville Bambino Plus. If you're not yet subscribed, please do subscribe. That does go a really long way for us. And if you are subscribed, thank you. Why don't you leave a comment and let me know what your favorite coffee is. Follow along on Instagram. I am at Keo Kosho on Instagram. You can follow at Daily Drink Mag on Instagram and follow at Honeycomb Manila, which is this place, our studio in Double Dragon Plaza. So let's get into it, into the Breville Bambino Plus. But before we do, I do want to say where we got this from. Breville did not send us this machine. They did not send me the machine. They did not send Daily Drink Mag the machine. However, we did not pay for it. The reason that this ends up here is because our friend and colleague and team member here at Honeycomb, Dave Dorsey, is actually a brand ambassador for Breville. And as a result, we actually have a lot of Breville stuff here. We have the dual boiler, we have the grinder, we have the precision brewer, there's a blender. And if you want to know about any of those things, you can ask us and we will answer them. And if you want us to make a video on any of those things, fine, I'll make a blender video. So we've had this machine for about 2 months already, and we've been playing with it. And this week, Breville has finally come out and said that they're going to be selling it. We saw some links on Lazada, on Facebook, and so thought maybe there are a lot of people who want to know more about this machine right now. So let's dive into it. We'll talk about what's in the box, what does that mean. We'll talk about the technology of the machine, and we're gonna make coffee, of course. What we want to figure out today is who is this machine for and how do you use it? Now, in terms of the anatomy of the machine, it's very straightforward. There's some buttons on the front, no gauges, no thermostat, there's no readout to see what the temperature is. That's it. You have this nice drip tray with a little bob button here, so that lifts up, it floats up when it's full of water. That's nice. All of the heating elements and pumps are all here in the main part of the body. And over here you have the group head. Now the group head is nice and open, nice and exposed, and that's where the portafilter connects to. Now in the back you have the water tank. It is removable, I believe, but we're not going to take it out today. From an aesthetic point of view, it's very much Breville. Brushed metal, it feels like pretty good quality. I will say it's slightly less sturdy maybe than the Barista Pro, the dual boiler. But for all intents and purposes, this is a really nice machine with a really nice footprint that you can fit on your kitchen counter. For most people, this will be perfect. Aside from the machine, you get a few things in the box, and let's talk about those things more or less. I'll leave a few out. First, they send you a pitcher. This is a stainless steel pitcher. It's okay. It will work for what you need it to do, but if you have a better pitcher or actually a smaller pitcher, then I would recommend using a smaller pitcher for this machine. You also have Breville's tamper. Now this is a 54 millimeter portafilter and a 54 millimeter basket. So they had to include a 54 millimeter tamper. At first I thought it was a little bit dinky, but it's kind of grown on me. Like it has just, you know, a good amount of weight. It's not too light, but it's not as nice as, say, the tamper that comes with the dual boiler, but it'll do the job. Next in the box, you have this thing that Breville calls the razor, and it's a precision dose trimming tool is what they call it. And basically, this is kind of the predecessor to the OCD, if you guys are familiar with coffee distributors. So this goes in the basket and you spin it around like that, and it's supposed to distribute your coffee. All right, so up next you have, of course, your portafilter. Now the portafilter is, as I mentioned, a 54 millimeter portafilter, a plastic handle. It's a little bit dinky, but it gets the job done, and this is one of the ways that you can upgrade your machine in the future, but you really don't need to. And going into the portafilter, you have your portafilter basket. So you have your single dose basket, and then you have your double dose basket. Basically, you make single espressos with your single basket, and you make your double espressos with your double basket. Honestly, we almost never make single espressos, so I'm going to take that and I'm just going to put it aside. Now, both the baskets are what we call pressurized or dual wall baskets, and you can see that when you flip the basket upside down. You can actually see that it says dual wall over here. I'm going to use a chopstick to point it out to you. So with the dual wall basket, you have on the top side, you have all of those holes that a normal portafilter has, but on the reverse side, you have just one hole on the other side. Now, if you can see all these little bumps here, right? These little divots inside of the center of the basket, those are not holes. Only that one in the very center is the hole. Now, the way that a dual wall works and all pressurized portafilters work is that it compensates for variables in your coffee and kind of guarantees that it's going to get up to a certain pressure at some point. And it does it by forcing all of the liquid through that hole. Now, I haven't seen anyone really explain this very well, but I'm going to try to do that now. Basically, what's working here is something called Bernoulli's principle, and I actually talk a lot about this in our advanced brewing workshops for pour-over, but right now we see it being applied in espresso. And the concept of Bernoulli's principle is relatively simple. We all learn it in school and then we kind of forget how it's applied. But basically, Bernoulli's principle is what allows for flight. A fluid, gas, or liquid that is moving through a tunnel will put less pressure on the walls as the tunnel gets more narrow, right? So it will put less pressure on the walls and more pressure on the exit. So it'll move faster as it's moving through that smaller hole. So what you're seeing here is that you're actually seeing kind of a tunnel effect where you see the pressure accelerate from this larger tunnel over here to this smaller tunnel on the exit. So it puts less pressure on the walls and more pressure going outwards. So forcing the liquid through there puts the coffee liquid through an elevated amount of pressure. Now, I said something really important there that you need to take note of. It puts the pressure on the liquid, not on the coffee. And that is the key difference between a pressurized portafilter, a dual wall portafilter, and a regular single wall portafilter basket. And so just for comparison, here is a standard portafilter basket, right? It has all of the holes. And on the reverse side, it has an equal number of holes. The pressurized, the dual filter basket has all of the holes and then only one hole on the reverse. So on a regular portafilter, all of the pressure is going in here and coming out there, right? On a dual wall basket, there is some pressure going in here, and then between this wall and that wall, the pressure increases. But at this point, the coffee is already a liquid. So it is slightly different. And now the reason that that's done is because this is kind of a little bit more foolproof. It allows you to use pre-ground coffee. It allows you to use older coffee instead of freshly ground coffee. Now, is that a pro or a con? Let's find out. All right, so we've cleaned up and we have everything that we need to make coffee here on the table. And the machine is off. So from its off state, supposedly you're supposed to be able to get hot water within 3 seconds. Now that is true. The machine will boot up in 3 seconds, but your portafilter won't be hot. So this is how I recommend you turn on your Bambino Plus. So load up your portafilter with the pressurized basket. And this is kind of also going to demonstrate how pressurized that basket really is. And we're going to turn on our machine. One button turns on. Those lights are on. It's ready to make coffee. So what I usually do is I am going to press the button and let water flow through the portafilter. Once water goes through, there's now hot water in that portafilter. And to demonstrate, I'm going to pull it out and show you. The portafilter is now full of hot water. And that water is still at 77 degrees Celsius. So that's why you need to heat up your portafilter, because the water, even if you can brew coffee at 3 seconds, supposedly with a Bambino, the portafilter still is not at the correct temperature. So I'm going to do that one more time. And again, our portafilter is full of water. Temperature inside the portafilter is now at 82 degrees, so that's a lot more acceptable in terms of a coffee brewing temperature. Now, you'll notice that the water is not flowing through the portafilter. That's how little the water can actually get through that double wall, that dual wall. And that's also why tamping and distribution don't matter as much in a pressurized portafilter, in a pressurized portafilter basket. Because it doesn't matter how much you distribute, that basket is not going to push the coffee through until everything is wet, until the chamber is completely saturated. So there actually is a pre-infusion feature on the Bambino, but there's almost no reason to use it when you're using this pressurized portafilter. Now that that's heated up, let's make some coffee. To demonstrate today, we're going to be using two specialty coffees, one Brazil Cerrado and one Ethiopia Sidamo. And this kind of represents the standard, very approachable, day-to-day specialty coffee that most people will be drinking. All right, so I've freshly ground in 17 grams of coffee into our portafilter. 17 is kind of the limit. Tamper coffee. Now, it doesn't need to be super level. It doesn't need to be super heavily tamped. Just a light press onto the coffee will do fine. Again, it's a pressurized portafilter, so these variables don't matter quite as much. All right, so put our scale. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make our first cup using our programming mode. To set a volumetric timing or to program the machine, you have to go through one cycle. And the way you do it is that you hold down these two buttons, and then it starts to blink. After it blinks, you'll press the button, and that will start the brew process. And it's now going to brew as it normally would. So we put in 17 grams, so our target amount of coffee out will be about 38 to 40 grams. Now it's not bad. So 42 grams in about 28 seconds. That's pretty much a good espresso. Now, as you can see, there's a good amount of crema in there. Now, there's some debate as to whether this is real crema because it comes from the dual wall portafilter, but it doesn't have the big heavy bubbles that you get sometimes with that fake crema. So I'm pretty satisfied with the quality and the look of this crema. Let's give it a taste. It's good. Is it espresso? Yeah, it's espresso. It's tasty, creamy. I wouldn't mind that. Like, if I could make espresso in, a minute in the morning, this would not be bad. It's a little bit bitter, a little bit, I guess, not quite over-extracted, but it has some unpleasantness, right, to it that I'm not getting from other espresso machines and other portafilter baskets. But I think the thing that suffers the most is the clarity. Usually when you're tasting an Ethiopian coffee like this one, you can very much taste all of the nuance and the fruitiness, and all of that is kind of lost. Is it good coffee? Yeah, it's good coffee. But is it the best this coffee can be? So that's the Ethiopia Sidamo. Let's try this again with the Brazil coffee. To minimize confusion, I'm going to use a different cup, but we are going to use the same programming that we used the last time and just press this button once, and it should in theory give us the same amount of yield. Stopped at 39.8 in about 28 seconds. So pretty much this is a good espresso, a good number. You can see the distribution of crema in there right now, just as it's settling. And there seems to be a large amount of crema on this one. If you notice, there was crema immediately on this shot. This coffee is a lot more fresh. So the Ethiopia coffee was about maybe 7 weeks old, and this one is like just last week. Let's see how it fares. So this Brazil Cerrado is sweet, tangy. It's definitely a specialty coffee. Some nice, very clear chocolatey notes, but also some tangy dried fruits. Not specific, so it's not very nuanced, but there are distinct flavors to it. Is it an espresso that I'd like to drink? Yes, it is an espresso I'd like to drink. Could I make a better espresso on another machine? I probably could. But if I was making it on another machine, I'd probably need to wait 15 minutes for the machine to heat up. And this one does it in seconds, so pros and cons, I guess. All right, so what are we tasting here between these two cups of coffee that we've made? I think that for most people, this is an okay cup of coffee, and it's better than a lot of coffee that people are currently making at home. So those two espressos were a really good example of a very entry-level specialty coffee, right? If you're, in the number system, you're talking about 80, 81, 82 rated coffees. And I think that that's kind of the sweet spot for how good your espressos are going to get on this machine. There's no ability to dial them in. There's no pressure gauge to tell if you're really getting the correct amount of pressure. There's no temperature gauge. The way that it heats up water is very similar to a Technivorm, dropping a little bit of water onto a very hot heating coil that's heating very rapidly. And because it's just a little bit of water that's going on that coil, it gets the temperature really, really fast. So I asked some people on Facebook and on my Instagram what questions they had about this machine, and one of them was, does it come with a basket, a regular basket, or do you need to buy that? And the answer is yes, you do need to buy that. Another question was, does it come with a grinder? And the answer is no, it doesn't come with a grinder. You're supposed to buy the grinder separate. But I think that this machine is not designed to be for someone who wants to have a grinder. Why? Because if you wanted to have a grinder off the bat, you just get a Barista Express. It's just a little bit more expensive. This is priced at around $30,000, I think, is the SRP for this machine, which is $600 US. And then the Barista Express is only $36,000, I think. And with the Barista Express, you get a grinder, right? The same 54 millimeter as portafilter. You get non-pressurized baskets. And all of those things are things that you might really want. But if you get this, you probably don't care that much about grinding your coffee fresh. And if that's the case, this machine's pretty perfect for you. You don't need a grinder for this machine. So let's say that you were using pre-ground coffee, right? And that's supposedly a big no-no in the specialty coffee world. But the truth is, there are people who like to order ground coffee. That's why you go to like really legitimate websites like El Union, happy anniversary to them, and to the Good Cup. And they'll offer ground coffee. If you want it ground, they'll sell it to you ground. And there's just an understanding that some people don't have grinders or don't want grinders. And if you are one of those people, a pressurized portafilter in a Bambino is kind of perfect for you. And that's both because it'll serve your needs right away, but should you want to improve this later on, you can. Now with that in mind, if you fit that profile, meaning someone who is maybe more casually into coffee, wants to get a little bit more serious, maybe you order a lot of coffee from Shopee or Lazada. Maybe you enjoy coffee from City Blends in 7-Eleven. I say that without judgment. I just say maybe you're that kind of person and you would like, you like coffee and you'd like to get a bit deeper into it. This is a really good step. And if you are that kind of person, you're probably buying coffee similar to this. This is a bag of Kickstart coffee. This is not what I would classify as specialty coffee at all. It is a local company that you buy at the supermarket. In fact, it has both a manufacture date and an expiry date. It was manufactured in November 2020 and says it expires in November 2021, and right now it is October 2021. So this is about 11 months old. Now it is whole bean coffee. It says it's Barako. I am very dubious as to whether or not it is Barako after seeing what the beans look like. But I think that this is a really good example of what the kind of person who is just starting out would buy and would get in the supermarket. So what we did was we took some of this coffee, and because it was whole bean, we wanted to simulate what it's like buying ground coffee, which we don't really do very often. So what we did was we ground it yesterday. It's more or less the correct grind size already. And what we're going to do is we're going to put it into our portafilter and we're going to make a latte. Now for our milk steaming, I will say off the bat that I think that this machine steams better than the Barista Express and at least as good as the dual boiler. And the only reason I'd say it's not as good as the dual boiler is because there's no articulation here. Basically, the wand is out or it's in and that's it. So you don't get much adjustment there. And then you don't have the knob for dialing in the steam pressure. That said, when I'm using the Breville dual boiler, it has such a manageable level of steam pressure that I always turn up the knob all the way anyway. So there's really no difference if you're pressing a button to get all of the steam pressure or turning that knob all the way. So I actually really like this. Here's the picture that they sent us that comes in the box, I should say. And I actually think that this is too big, but we'll use it later. So I'm going to put this to the side. And instead, we're going to use this little Rossetti milk jug. Now we filled it up to around the spout. That's 180 ml of milk, and that's about how much milk you want inside any pitcher. You want to go all the way to around where the spout is. So again, this is the same 17 grams that we put into our other shots, and we'll be using that same 2-cup button that we pre-programmed earlier. Let's see what happens. So that was not bad. It stopped at 39.7 grams at around 25 seconds. You can see this one has the much bigger bubbles that I was saying earlier. That is probably more of a fake crema that's generated by that double wall basket. And what that tells us is that it actually was getting real crema almost from the previous shots. And this one is fake because obviously you're not going to get this amount of crema from a coffee that is 1 year old. So maybe if you take the amount of crema that you see here and you subtract it from the amount of crema we saw earlier, that gives you a good idea of how much actual crema is in there. Let's steam the milk. All right, you steam it just like any other milk. I like to rest the nozzle inside of the spout. If you'd like to know more about milk steaming, we have a Barista 101 video on that, and that link will be up above. Wait for it to spin and then stretch. Once you have the right amount of bubbles, lift it up and stir that together. Temperature is correct. Press the power button. And really nice when you put the steam wand down, always remember to put the steam wand down right after steaming, because when you put it down, it's gonna purge itself. So that's super cool. The wand just cleans itself, purges itself right into the drip tray every time. I love that feature. All right, so here's our milk. Nice. It's a pretty nice, what do we call this, melted ice cream consistency. And I am not the world's best barista. I'm not the world's best latte artist. But The milk is pretty good. Let's see. Coffee smells like pretty traditional coffee. That's not too bad. I mean, it's not perfect, but one try on camera, some nice silky texture on the top, good surface tension. There's a little bit of big bubbles. I probably could have mitigated that by tapping my pitcher a few more times, but otherwise, it looks pretty good. Milk chocolate, touch of bitterness, like a brownie with nuts. It's not bad. It's actually not bad at all. Considering that we use that supermarket brand coffee, I think that this is better than something that you get in 7-Eleven. This might be something approaching the quality of something you get kind of at like a more entry level, third wave independent coffee shop. You know, something like a Commune tastes like this. And I think for most people, that's perfectly fine. For most people, this is what they want. And if they can achieve this at home, and I think this is the secret, so listen carefully. I think that this machine and its pressurized portafilter basket makes specialty really good coffees okay. I mean, it's clearly going to outperform something like a Don Lim or something that's like 1,000, 2,000 pesos. It's pretty good. But I think the secret is that it actually takes coffees that are not that good and makes them pretty good. Like, I'm not going to lie. If I made that coffee in the morning, I wouldn't be too mad at it. Like, especially if I booted my machine up in 3 seconds and I could make coffee instantly. I have it pre-programmed. As you saw through all of our shots, those were different coffees, different ages from different places, and they all came out with the same volumetrics every day, every shot. So you could do that every day. There is an argument for that. So if you'd like to maybe save a little money, both on the machine, on the grinder, and on your coffee, it's actually not a bad choice. It's actually a really good choice. Now, from a technical point of view, the way that this machine works, and the reason why I think it doesn't have any gauges and such, is because it has an expected temperature that the coffee is always going to come out at. And I'm estimating that is coming out of the boiler at around 96 degrees every time. You have no control over that. And that's one of the ways that it's able to get its coffee so quickly, because the water goes directly to a very hot temperature, boils almost immediately, so that it can feed out of the group head. But because the emphasis of this machine is on heating, there's nothing to dial it back. So if you think about a traditional machine, usually if you're talking about the Barista Express or even the dual boiler, when you're saying you're doing shot after shot, you're doing 5, 10, 15 shots, one after the other, the problem is usually that the pressure in the tank drops, right? You lose power because you lose heat. There's lower temperature. This doesn't have those problems because it just uses a pump to get you up to pressure. But because of the way it heats water, it actually goes in the other direction, right? Instead of worrying about dropping temperature, you're actually more worried about overheating and burning your coffee that way. So from 96 degrees, it can climb up to maybe 98 degrees. And while that might seem like a small step, in terms of espresso, it's a major step. It's a major jump forward in terms of temperature. And for that reason, I would recommend that this machine be for 1, 2, 4-person households, and do not make more than 5 shots in a row. Now, finally, there is one other feature that this machine has, which is auto steaming. I really like the manual steaming features. I think that they are Fantastic. I think that I would put this latte art up against, man, I'm not joking. This might be better than the Decent in terms of the steam wand. I definitely like it more. I have more control over this steam wand. But of course, the Decent Espresso is kind of, the steam is, I don't know, maybe a little bit of an afterthought in terms of steam quality. But in terms of manual steaming, this thing's fantastic. Now let's see what the auto steaming looks like. All right, so now we're gonna put our milk in the pitcher that they included in. And this is about 180 or 200 ml of milk. And I'm just gonna put it in. And apparently what you're supposed to do is put it all the way to make sure that you're making contact with that little knob sensor on the bottom. And then I'm going to set this for the minimum amount of temperature and the minimum amount of foam, and just press this button. And it's just gonna foam on its own. Let's see how well it does. Let's see how well it did. So it looks like there is a decent amount of foam on there. It's not the same as the one that I did, but there are no big bubbles, so that's pretty good. I think the concern is that there is some separation between kind of the liquid and the foam, so it's not super well integrated. Let's see how it looks in the cup. Oops. Shoot, I spilled it. Oh well, anyway, so I spilled the coffee, but you can see the bubbles, the latte art, it's okay. This was human error, that was my fault really. But hey, let's taste the coffee, let's see what it tastes like. The milk is actually at a really good temperature. It's delicious. And it took almost no work. I didn't need to know how to steam. The bubbles could be better, but my latte art is pretty okay. It's acceptable. I think for most people, that will do the trick. The auto steaming actually does work. Pros and cons. Pros, it turns on right away. Great. It steams milk really well. It gives you pretty good espresso. It takes coffee that some might describe as bad, some might describe as, not specialty, subpar coffee, and makes them actually really good coffees. The auto steaming works better than most people will make milk themselves. If you are into manual steaming, if you would like to learn manual steaming, it can teach you that. It will do a better job than the Barista Express. Cons, no grinder. But that might also be a pro, because if you are not that good at making coffee anyway, the pressurized basket will take your pre-ground coffee and make it better. Pre-ground coffee will absolutely not work well in your non-pressurized basket, but in a basket like this, it can actually make it taste really good, as we've seen. I might put the pressurized basket in the cons category, but I will say that even if you swapped out this basket for a non-pressurized basket, well, that would require you to have a grinder, to have a good grinder. So I think that there is a place for this pressurized basket, and they should include it, especially if people are planning to use this without a grinder. But I do think that they should include a non-pressurized basket. It comes with all this other stuff that frankly I don't think we need and nobody cares about. This single basket, nobody cares about that single basket. No one ever uses this. Correct me if I'm wrong, but most people who want to make a good coffee don't really care about this. and it's just not in style anymore. The razor distribution tool, I mean, we tried to use it, we couldn't use it. Once you get past 13, 15 grams of coffee, this thing just goes too deep into the portafilter and causes all of the coffee to spill. We don't like this. And you know what? This is a lot of metal. This has got to be like, what, 25, 30 grams of metal. This is probably also 20 grams of metal. You could just get rid of both of these and give me a 54 millimeter basket. Like, it's not rocket science. It probably won't cost them more. I'm sure they have them. So what do I recommend? Do I like this machine? I love this machine. I think it's a great, for the price, 30,000 pesos is a bit more than I think it should be. At 25,000, this thing would be a no-brainer. Which brings me to wait. That's my advice. Buy this thing when it goes on discount. Make sure that you're following like the official Breville Facebook page, their Instagram account. Make sure you're following. I think they have a TikTok. Make sure that you're following them, and they don't pay me to say this. If you follow them, make sure you do, so that you can DM them the moment that they go on sale. And when they go on sale and this thing goes for, you know, less than 30K, right? Let's say there's a 15% discount, right? So that's like what, 4,000 pesos, 4,500 cheaper, 25,000. At that price, this thing's a no-brainer, right? 25K, just over 25K, no-brainer. Buy this thing. If you can get a deal, buy the thing. And honestly, once you get to that 25K price range, you know, there's really no real competition. Maybe the Dedica, maybe the DeLonghi Dedica, the cheaper one, but it's really not anywhere. I mean, with my experience with that machine, it's nowhere near this thing. Once you upgrade the grinder, or once you get a grinder, you should upgrade to a non-pressurized single wall basket. Get an IMS or a VST, one of those. I wouldn't necessarily recommend getting one of the ones from Lazada. They're not quite as precise as the VM. You know, there are standards, is what I'm saying. There are standard kinds of really nice baskets, right? And they are worth the extra, maybe 500 pesos that it would cost to get a proper IMS or VST basket versus just a generic Lazada one. Like, if you are gonna upgrade, get a proper upgrade. So those are my thoughts. You can wait for a sale or wait for the non-plus version of the Bambino. Oh, that's another con, by the way. This thing does not have a hot water spout. So if you're fond of Americanos, you need a separate kettle to make hot water in. And on that note, at that low end for grinders, like when you need to buy a grinder, Lelit has a really good grinder called the Fred. You, of course, can choose the Smart Grinder, also made by Breville, which is about 12,000 pesos. The Fred, I think, is 14,000. I think for just that 2,000, it's worth just going up to the Fred. My point is, there is a place to start. And for, 45,000 pesos, I would say that it is better than the Barista Express, because that steam one is so much better. And the boot up time makes all the difference. Because the boot up time is so good, you can actually turn it off, let it cool down, boot it up again. With all that said, I hope you covered everything, and I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did enjoy the video, please click like, please subscribe, and tell a friend. If you have any questions or any experience with this machine, do ask them in the comment section down below, or you can send me a DM on Instagram. I am at KOKosh on Instagram. Follow at Honeycomb Manila on Instagram, and at Daily Drink Mag on Instagram as well. Now, while I do appreciate the DMs and our interaction on Facebook, when you comment in the comment section down below, it helps other people who come across this video in the future, and I'd appreciate that as well. I can answer the question there, and other people can read it, and that kind of gives us, a little bit more, we can be more helpful to more people, which is our goal, because we really don't make any money doing any of this. So, actually, no, we're monetized now. So, tell a friend, we could use more ads. All right, thank you for watching this much. I wish you guys good luck. I wish you guys good health. I wish you guys some great coffee. Peace. Oh, by the way, the guy who was asking about what the black thing is over there, I turned the light on, made sure the light was on this time so that you can see that that's another room over there. Have a good one.